Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the Mayor, Heath Shearon, and the host of this podcast. I am so excited you're here today. We had a great episode. I just recorded it, so I know it was good, with my man, Matt Waxman, with Alchemy, and we talk all things builder's risk, and we get deep into it. We talk about a lot of cool stuff. So make sure that you stick around and check this one out. It is a really solid one. It's got a lot of good meat into it. So this episode is sponsored by my good friends at Smart Choice. They have 11 billion in written premium. They have 10,000 agencies countrywide. They've got, they just crush it. They have no requirements as far as like how much premium you write. They have lower premium thresholds. They have higher commissions. They got it all. Make sure that you go to smartchoiceagents.com. They love working with you guys. And I love working with them. And I love hearing the stories. I just got back from a conference, and all I heard, everybody that talked to me about stuff that I didn't know, like one of the first things they'd say to me was like, especially if they were a Smart Choice agent, hey, we're a Smart Choice agent. We heard about it from your show, or, we know they sponsor your show. We love Smart Choice, and we love working with whatever their TM's name was. And so very cool. Also, my good friends over at Canopy Connect, I also got to spend some time with them, and I get to see them a lot on the road, and I get to hear all these good things about them. And so make sure you check them out. They do a phenomenal job with intake forms, with getting you deck pages, getting you loss runs, getting you vehicle lists, driver lists, you name it, man. They are phenomenal. Make sure you go check them out at usecanopy.com. That's usecanopy.com/Heath. So make sure you go check them out. Now, I'm going to get out of the way and let you check out this great conversation with my man, Matt Waxman. Matt Waxman, what's going on, brother?
Hey, Heath, how's it going? It's been a whirlwind, and just getting back from Agent Brokers United. It's a brief respite before travel again. I wind up very rarely having my feet on the ground, so it's a pleasure to be in one place long enough to have this conversation. Pleasure to connect with you.
Yeah, brother. I was so happy to meet you last week at ABU. That was so much fun, and get to know you a little bit. And so, but I didn't know, what is this behind you here? Do you play? Like, what's going on here?
I don't play. Actually, behind me is like a partially deconstructed, partially constructed wall. So I'm a big fan of Lightning. I've been a big fan of Lightning for as long as I've been in Tampa, and up until this past season was a season ticket holder. So I've been collecting my favorite players' memorabilia, and there was a banner behind me, but unfortunately that banner had to come down because anytime I'm on camera, it recognizes the faces. So people were talking to me with a hockey player behind me. And so I took it down. Now it's like a memorabilia wall. You can't see it off to the left. Off to the left is all of my knees paid for this running medals when I used to do distance running.
Yeah. So, that's awesome.
Those are a fond reminder of why I can't distance run anymore, but a memory of the things that I've accomplished. So
that's awesome. Yeah, man. Again, this is not Hockey Town podcast, but man, Tampa's become a hockey town. Like, it's been really cool. Like, most time you think of like Minnesota or like cold, like Toronto or like Canada when you think of hockey. Like, you don't normally think, until the last 4 or 5 years, Tampa. But man, the Lightning have been solid and put you guys on the map there a little bit.
Yeah, no, the Lightning have had a really nice, steady run of the playoffs year after year after year. We've got a couple cup wins behind us, which is awesome. And then even with Florida winning last year, I feel like the last 5 or 6 years, the cup has found its way to Florida, and Florida has found its way to the finals, whether it be Tampa or Florida. One of us is always kind of there. We had a bad exit this year, but I'm not going to say I didn't sort of expect it. Anytime we go in with super high hopes, it usually is a first round exit. So
I hear you. We don't have hockey where I'm at, so I never did get into it very much. But I see, I'm a Sports Center guy, so I see what's going on. I follow it that way. But that's pretty cool, man. So have you always been a sports guy, or mostly just a hockey guy, or have you? And I know you said running, but I didn't know any other sports.
So really, hockey is the only like spectator sport aside from like watching the Olympics. I am an
Yeah.
Olympics junkie, so when the Olympics are on,
Oh yeah.
my competitive side comes out, and I am glued to that TV. It's usually playing in the background in the corner all day long, so I don't miss anything.
Oh yeah. That
But yeah,
yeah.
hockey's my main sport. If I'm gonna pick one to follow, that's the one that I like. It's the most gladiator-like of everything,
Sure.
and the most engaging. So
I'll tell you, the funniest thing for me, the fun one for me to watch during the Olympics is I get enthralled with the curling. Like, that is for me one of the coolest things to watch, and it's like, how in the world they do that? Like, I don't know, it's fun for me to watch that, and then I'm not a soccer guy, but when it's, US soccer and, like, we're doing that whole like, I get into anything like that, whether it's
I was gonna
girls
say
or men's, it's just like, I get into it.
it's too warm for you where you are to get curling in. Like we actually they've tried it a couple years now where they've set up like temporary curling here in Tampa during the winter. It doesn't work.
No, I bet it doesn't.
But it's a captivating sport. I'm not gonna lie. I think
Dude,
there's been more than enough times we've been at the distillery and just watching curling for hours.
yeah, dude, I get really into it, and then my wife, my daughters get really into the gymnastics and some of that other stuff. So yeah, I'm an Olympics guy too. So really, really cool. So in fact, next week, Vertifor, which is another company I work with,
Hmm.
they've got Michael Phelps coming to speak at their conference. So
No way.
yeah, very cool. So
Where's the Vertifor conference at?
say what
Where's that conference at?
in oh gosh, Charlotte.
Oh, there you go. It's
It's
not that far.
Accelerate. Yeah,
Yeah.
so, very cool to see that, but anyhow, enough about that, but, very cool to see. I saw that behind you, I was like, "Man," I almost went lacrosse, but I was like, "No, that's hockey." But
It
anyway,
it is hockey. It's been in the build for a while. I am missing a game used jersey. One of these days, I will get my hands on one, and
yeah,
I'll put the
dude.
banner back up, and it won't be maybe as distracting. But for
Oh,
folks in the
that's
background
awesome.
here, it's it's a lot. But I
Yeah,
my office is very much like a reflection of me, and I've always kind of kept it that way because it
sure.
keeps me grounded as opposed
Yep,
to me feeling in an office setting. I want to feel comfortable and relaxed in conversation and engaged
yep.
in what's going on and just feel cozy. So,
No, I hear you. I'm the same way. I've got my wall over here, like a family and home and whatever. And then, obviously behind me, I have to have my podcast wall, and then I've got like a big, banner or two over here, my Arkansas Razorbacks. But, anyhow, so, tell me a little bit. Let's take a walk down memory lane and let's, introduce, my audience to Matt Waxman. Tell me, you know, how you got to where you are today. Like, lead me up to that.
okay. Definitely a lot of story there. So, I actually am born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, um, and was in school. I tell people I came full circle. So, essentially, in high school, they have you meet with those counselors, and the counselors are telling you, like, here's what you should do, and I sit down with them, and they're like, you should be in marketing, you should be in sales, you've got a knack for it. And so when I went to college, I signed up to be a marketing major, went to school as a marketing major, took micro, macro, and my parents had this prevailing thought in my head all the time, says, you know, go for what you love, go for what you love. I took an anthropology class and I dipped out of marketing completely and just
Yeah.
went straight for anthropology, archaeology. I have my degree in zooarchaeology and forensic archaeology, which is definitely makes me like a conversationalist at the parties, but not a very practical skill overall. Um, Exited that after school, went into hospitality,
Okay.
and my partner's sister said, "Why are you wasting time in hospitality? You should be in insurance." And I said,
Okay. That's a
"Okay,
leap.
yeah." I was like, the two have nothing to do with one another, and took a shot. Walked into a local Allstate office and said, "How do I get into insurance?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Here's a white pages. Pick a letter. Start dialing." Which I think anybody who's listening
Oh,
to the
yeah.
podcast who's been through the Allstate thing is pretty familiar with that, or at least back in the day. Now there's no white pages, so it's a little bit different.
Right.
Um, but started out that way. Then actually switched over to claims. Worked in claims on personal lines and auto. From personal lines and auto, made the jump like a leap of faith jump actually, and took a marketing rep job with Gainsco Auto Insurance.
Yeah,
Worked with
very
Gainsco
familiar.
for
Yeah.
3 years. Yeah, I figure. And then from there went over to expand a Florida-only auto GA. So they brought me in. They had a pretty predominant footprint within what they call the Tri-County area here, which is going to be Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. But they wanted to expand out beyond that. And me personally, and I use this term a lot, um, but I always like to brand myself as the pioneer. So if someone tells me this is where we want to be, but we don't know how to get there, I am all about it. Set me loose. Let me go. So they brought me in to expand their footprint. Originally, under the CEO that they had there, they wanted to expand throughout Florida and then go subsequently outside of Florida. They were writing about $100 million in premium at that point. Threw me out there and said, grow. I took them to $500 million in premium, and then left and started over at Cornerstone, which is now Alchemy. So same
Wow.
kind of thing. I'm over here now as the director of program distribution, basically heading up sales and marketing for this GA that's been here for 10 years that desperately is expanding, rapidly expanding throughout all 50 states. So pretty impressive.
Wow.
But again, full circle. Marketing in high school, marketing in college, abandonment of that, and then back to marketing again. So
There you go. So it was meant to be. You were meant
it,
to be in that. And
I think
so
so.
and I think the beautiful thing is like insurance does touch everything. And so, you know, like whether you're in marketing or whether you're in hospitality or whether you're in, the other things that you did, I can't even pronounce the things you said you had done, anthropology and some of that kind of stuff. I think I know it all touches insurance and insurance touches it. And that's one of the things like for me, developing my passion over the last, I guess, 45 years of my life, of insurance is because you can't do anything without insurance. You can't own a business. You can't own a car, a house. You can't drive your car. You can't do anything without it. And so, it's so important to me. And so, I guess it's not too much of a stretch to say you shouldn't be doing hospitality. You should be doing insurance. So, I think that's really cool. So, Cornerstone, when you came over to Cornerstone, what was, before the rebrand and whatnot, what was Cornerstone? Like, a regional MGA, like only in Florida, only in, where was it?
So the bulk of everything that Cornerstone was doing was in Florida and Texas markets. So Cornerstone had a builder's risk program that was throughout Florida and Texas that was established. It's been around for just about 10 years or so. Really cranking away at the hard to place coastal risks, high value frame, stuff that nobody really wanted essentially. And I think, for a GA, it's important to identify needs in the market and be able to solve. And so a lot of what we specialize in is trying to solve for those pain points in the market. So being able to write high value coastal all the way up to the water with wind is something that was sorely needed, especially, in hurricane ravaged areas like Texas and Florida. So that's primarily what they did. 2 years ago, which is still before I came on, we launched a cannabis program, again, solving for pain points in an emerging market, looking for a solution where everybody else was offering either monoline or package, coming into the market for cannabis with a business owner's policy, being able to subsequently solve for individuals who are, I'm getting my license to open a dispensary. These states are, just switching over to medical or just switching over to adult, recreational use. Being able to say, we know you don't have a ton of money to throw behind your business, but we can provide a coverage for you that'll give you everything you need to get your license and get you moving and keep you covered, and it won't break the bank. So that was what they had worked on before I came on board.
Yeah.
And then I came on board right about at the same time that we launched our national builders risk program. So when I came on, we were still Cornerstone at that point. I tell people I entered in a whirlwind because I came on board, and within 4 days I was over at WSIA over in San Diego talking about programs that literally had just blown the doors off of my brain, because I started off in auto. Everything I did was in personal lines all the way up until this point, and then all of a sudden you step out of the personal lines world into commercial, and it's
Yeah.
like every door in the insurance industry is open, because the umbrella is just so large at that point, and so then you're kind of
100%.
overstimulated walking into it.
100%. And I think the builder's risk space is such an interesting space. Back in my agency days when I was selling and whatnot, that was something I focused on because I wrote some contractors and especially, GCs and whatnot. And at first I thought this is weird. You got, your 3-month or your 6-month or your 9-month policies, you got whatever. It was like, these aren't necessarily going to renew. You might be able to get them to do another one, but it's like, but it would always lead to something. Like after the project was done, you had your opportunity, and there was so much that went into it. A lot of people that I talked to, a lot of agencies might shy away from builder's risk because it's not necessarily, a renewable policy, or it's not, because once the project's done, it's done. But it does open up those doors.
You hit that right on the head, Heath. I mean, the old school mentality, I'm going to say this and it never sounds right when you say it, but like the old school insurance mentality is the money is in the renewals. So when you start to look at a line like builder's risk where renewals aren't really a thing, agents start to say, well, what's in it for me? Like this is a one and done. This is a one and done. And you're 100% correct. And we look at it the same way. There's a ton of opportunity that comes from that builder's risk relationship. You have that relationship with the builder. You have the contractor's liability on there. You can insure the subs. You can, switch that over to a homeowner's policy in the future. There's a lot of connections that come from that one builder's risk client. Not to mention the fact that very rarely, especially in today's age, you don't see somebody building one house or renovating one house. It's not a thing. It's always a subsequent relationship that jumps beyond there, and then you wind up getting every project that they do. And if you're an agent and you can luck out and you can get somebody who's a bigger builder, then you're looking at 50 projects a year, 75 projects a year. It really starts to pay the bills because you're not looking at renewals, but you're looking at the residuals. Every project comes to you. Every project gets written. Or, if you're lucky enough, you can get them on a reporting form and then they just stay with you forever. And you're getting every project that comes in and you really are kind of hands off at that point because they're filling out the paperwork, they're sending the premium in, and everything is just moving smoothly. And that's
Yeah.
what
And
they want.
it's
They want
also,
uninterrupted. So,
yeah. And especially if you can take proper care and like do it the right way, because a lot of times, as anybody that is listening or anyone that doesn't know, I can tell you now, when you start, it might start off as like they say, oh, it's going to take 6 months, but it's usually going to extend beyond that. They're never right on time when they say it's going to be this way. So if you can do it the right way, you can handle those changes the right way and pivot, and people do. It's such a good opportunity to show your customer service, to show, how you take care of people. Because again, I don't think I ever wrote, maybe I did, I shouldn't say that, but very rarely did I write, a builder's risk policy that, was on track to be
yeah.
finished when it was supposed to.
I was gonna say, I mean, in a perfect world, everybody is, and typically your builder's risk policies are 12-month policies. Obviously, it depends on the market in the area, but municipalities get in the way. There's slows in money. There's slows in. I mean, we went through COVID. The supplies
Yeah.
were not available. All those things get slowed down, and you'd wind up with carriers. Some carriers are more than willing to take on renewals, or extensions on a builder's risk policy. Some shy away from it. Some will only extend to a certain point. Some won't take a mid-completion. So if something falls through and you go a period without, they won't take it. And I'm really proud of the fact that we have underwriters that'll go above and beyond on those things. And we'll look at, a project that's 80% done or 85% done and won't automatically say, well, why are they just asking for coverage now? Or
Yeah.
what's wrong with this risk? Or, we'll try to find a solution so that we can go ahead and get that written for the client. We want to make sure that our agents are able to place business. We want to make sure they're able to keep their clients happy because it keeps flowing,
You're 100% correct. And I love that. And especially, you talk about doing builder's risk in some tough to place business states, especially Florida. You talked about Texas, and then, you're expanding, as you said, in 50 states. I live in Arkansas, where it's become like Tornado Alley. It used to be Oklahoma. Now it's kind of shifted this way, and the weather patterns have switched. And then if you're expanding out west, you got wildfires and you've got some issues out there. And like the property market is not the easiest market. Obviously, that's where an MGA is going to be able to help a lot more. But it's definitely Had to have been a fun game and I shouldn't say game, but it's got to be fun for you in some ways, to be able to do that, because it's challenging. A lot of people are like, oh, the property market sucks. It's so hard. And, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity to show up and show out.
And I think you said it right. That's what we aim to do, right? Is to show up and show out, essentially. Put these programs out there that are going to solve, that are going to help, and expand the programs that we have. So, I mean, one of the things that we want to work on now that we've got like the rebrand out of the way, now that we're Alchemy Insurance Solutions, and I think we're better positioned, and we've got a better notion of who we are as a company and what we are as a culture and what we deliver to our producers. We're looking at expansion of the things that we have. So that Florida, Texas program solves a lot of problems for hurricane-prone areas for builders risk. We're going to look to expand that out. And as we look to expand that out, of course, the focus on the coastal portion is going to be those hurricane-ravaged areas. Our 50-state program already does, wind affected, wildfire affected. So we've got capacity there, but we're going to actually enhance that capacity in the next couple of weeks with an E&S builders risk program under our roof as well. So we'll have the E&S to back things up when things go outside of, or you're running into situations now where you have, the Eaton and the Palisades fire that destroyed huge swatches of California. And that's a property market that almost nobody wants to play in. And that's something that we're looking to try and solve for. So we're working directly with our carrier partners to find solutions to help people get back in building.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Sorry, I'm taking some notes here, so I'll make sure I don't forget some of the things you're saying. But
no, you're good.
So anyhow, I think as you're talking to agents right now, listening, or MGAs, or there's some carrier reps that listen a lot too. What could you tell them as far as some advice when it comes to that right now? Because again, it is a tough market, and it is. We're seeing some areas of the industry soften up, but definitely not the property market right this second, especially in Florida and some of those tough place markets. But what are some things you could tell agents, listening, or the audience listening, that might help them to see it in a different light and see, this is an opportunity for builders risk?
Property is always an opportunity. It's just a matter of understanding the product that you're offering. The harder that the times get, it's easy to get frustrated. We see it time and time again with agents where, markets get tight, especially Florida, California, coastal Texas. It's really easy as an agent to have a customer come in and present something to you, and for you to shut down and say, I don't have a market for that. I can't solve for this. I don't have a placement opportunity. And then you get frustrated because you're thinking, well, that client needs coverage. At the end of the day, they need coverage. You may not have access to the right market for it, but you can't just give up. It's about finding the carriers that have positioned themselves in the right place, or the GAs that have the programs in the right place, that are willing to underwrite those risks. And underwriting flexibility is, I think, the key right now in this property market, is having an underwriter who says, I know this is difficult and I know nobody wants to take it, but can we find a way? Can we find a price for this? Can we find coverage where coverage isn't? And I guess I'm fortunate and blessed that we have a great team of underwriters that are more than happy to do that. Like, they'll go ahead and they'll get us on the phone. They'll get the producer on the phone. I will tell you, like, on the agent side of things, the more an agent is willing to prepare when they submit a risk, the easier it is for the underwriter to understand where they're coming from, and the easier it's going to be for placement in that hard market. Being able to go and say, this is the situation that I've run into. This is what my customer is dealing with. This is what we're trying to underwrite, is a lot easier than saying, here's an app. Because when you come with just an app, you're going to get a lot of questions in return. It's going to add to more frustration. The likelihood that you're going to get a declination increases, and you're just going to get frustrated. Your client's going to get frustrated, and you may lose that client somewhere else. And we don't want anybody to be frustrated. We know it's a tough market. The agents know it's a tough market. The producers out there, whether you're on the wholesale side or you're on the retail side, it's not easy.
Right.
And the trick is, finding the right partners to find those solutions for you. And I think that that's something that we do fairly efficiently right now.
Yeah, you
I
brought
tell
up
people
something
we
that
solve for like the difficult X, basically, is what I tell them.
And you brought up something, along those same lines, and I want to go back to it because that underwriter relationship is such a crucial relationship that agents need to have. I mean, we know that it's an obvious thing, but especially when it comes to what you're talking about. And, obviously each line's a little different. And some agents listen to this and people listen to this right now may not be as, versed on builder's risk because it's different. You got to think about a lot of different things, and you got to think about mid-project coverage costs. You got to think about, delays. You've got to think about, building material. You got a lot of things that you go through and you think about that might be a little bit different from your typical, property coverage or GL or auto or whatever it might be. What are some advice you could give, or what are some things you can tell somebody that's looking at builder's risk or that might have one coming up or whatever that might help them to develop that relationship a little bit more? As far as maybe building that narrative to help sell that policy to the underwriter. Because there's two sells, in my opinion. You got to sell the client, but you also got to sell the carrier.
Yep, 100%.
On the risk.
And I think you're correct. I think that there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there. So some of that, and I think a good portion of that, is really an understanding of what builder's risk is and what your client's needs are. Because it's really easy to kind of boil builder's risk down to being like, well, it's a property coverage. Well, it is, but not all property coverage is created equal. What specifically does your client need? Plus, what do they need in the state they're operating in? You'll run into states where you're going to have to tack on premise liability. You're going to run into lien holders that are going to have specific requirements that are not always going to jive with what the insurance is providing or what you've thought about when you're quoting as well. So you need to really listen, but you need to really learn as well. And I see it more and more, and we interact fairly regularly with the producers on, in the sales marketing side of things. And you can tell the difference between, producers who've been selling builder's risk forever and, producers who just got their first builder's risk on the table.
Yeah.
And it's important to take a minute. It's exciting to get a builder's risk in, especially if you're getting like a great builder's risk in. Somebody comes to you and says, I've got this $10 million house that I need to get insured. And, you as the agent are thinking, all right, this is a great opportunity. There's going to be some real premium behind this. I'm going to send it to every carrier I possibly can and hope that it sticks. Knowing what they're doing, knowing how the build process works, knowing what materials they're using, knowing what the compliance factors are, all of that helps. If you understand how long the builder has been building for, whether it's a general contractor or whether it's a full sub project, if you know a little bit more and you ask a little bit more questions, you can provide more information up front. The more information that you can provide up front from the client to the underwriter, the happier that underwriter is going to be. I always love, and I don't do the underwriting myself, which is a blessing, but I always love when a producer goes ahead and puts everything neatly in a bow and says, this is what I'm trying to get insured. This is what I need.
Yep.
This is what I can present to you. And sometimes it's important to know, like, especially if it's a bigger build or a build where you're doing, some significant framework as opposed to joisted masonry. And a lot of the states use a lot of frame now. And you're getting places like Austin and the Carolinas, you're getting Virginia and stuff where they're building these huge frame houses. And you hear frame on property and people get a little antsy about covering frame at higher values. It's important to be able to say, you know what, Mr. or Mrs. Client, can you do me a favor? Can you provide me with a scope of work? Can you provide me with those building plans so that I can pass that along to the underwriter so they can see what exactly the plan is? How many stories are you building? What's the overall structure? We talk regularly with the underwriters. Having a builder that has been building for a while carries a lot of weight with underwriters as well. So when they look at that builder and they say, this is a good builder, they've been building for 25 years, they've never had a claim before,
right?
They're more apt to write that than they would be if it's a situation where, this builder just got their license yesterday and they're throwing together a 6-story frame house with an elevator. Like, the underwriter's going to think twice about the risk involved there. So,
well, plus they're not used to seeing that kind of stuff.
Right. As with most things in the commercial space, it is two sales. It is selling what you have to the client, but it is also selling what you want coverage for to the underwriter. And I think that that's something that people look over often. because you've got producers who will fill out an accord form and literally blanket it out there to everybody and hope that someone takes it. And you've got carriers that may not look or may not pay attention, but really what you want is a carrier that's going to provide you the maximum amount of coverage for your builder, or the maximum amount of coverage solution for your builder, the flexibility for the time that they need to build, and give you the most coverage. So a nice open peril form is the way to go, especially in the inland marine space, because then you only worry about what's excluded from the policy. You don't worry about everything else.
Yeah, and one of the other things that you brought up, I want to go back to for a minute before we move forward. I'm making sure I hit everything, because this is something that, I think is an interesting topic, and I love getting into this. And so I was glad that you were able to bring up builder's risk, because you mentioned municipalities that get involved in cities and counties and whatnot, because, you think about, permitting, and then like all of a sudden it'll be in the middle of a project. You might have some, red tape on a mid-project thing. And it's like, or they may come in with some new zoning laws or some new, pollution things that come up, or they may just need different things and code violations that might pop up or whatever that they weren't expecting. And you've got to be able to, and that's where, as an agent and as an MGA, as a partner of these agents, you've got to be able to know your stuff to be able to say, okay, this is what that means. If you're coming to me, because a lot of times they don't know that. I know when I first had that kind of situation come up, or I can remember early days writing, a couple builders risk policies, ordinance and law came up, and I was like, oh no, like, what is that? Like, what does that mean? What's going on? And I had to figure all that out. There's so much, like you said, the municipalities that can really, and you can't plan for that kind of stuff.
No.
And so having that relationship with the underwriter, kind of tying those two things together, I think you're speaking some real truth here that I think some agents need to hear as they're building that, because there is a real opportunity here. But I also think it's an opportunity to shine, but also an opportunity that you could really stub your toe.
Oh, for sure. I mean, one of the pillars of what we do is making sure that we're giving everybody direct access to our underwriters, because I want you guys to have a relationship right away. I want my producers to know, hey, I spoke to Cody in underwriting, and I talked to him about this risk, and I'm waiting to hear back on wind modeling, or I'm waiting to hear back on facultative reinsurance, or I'm waiting for an answer on, because I want everybody to know that as a GA, as a carrier, like, you should have access to. You should be able to go and say, I need help with this, because we're all sort of in this together. And I think I've taken that holistic approach to insurance like my whole career. At the end of the day, like, we want to write stuff for you, and we want you to write stuff, but there has to be a synergy there where we're understanding, we're communicating. So opening the doors and allowing that direct access to underwriter communication, providing extra ease of use where you can go ahead and literally drag and drop a file over to an underwriter so they can review it, having the ability for them to just chat you back and forth and say, hey, Jim agent, I saw you, sent this over. Can you also send me a scope of work so we can look at that? Or can you also send over a no loss, letting me know, that they've not had any claims on this policy yet, so that we can go ahead and take that over and move it forward. So it's really, to me, important to have that connection, because it lets people know in general, like, we're not a huge company, and we don't want to be like a huge infrastructure company where you got to cut through red tape to get a hold of things. We want to see our producers do well. We want to see our carriers do well, and we want to be able to continue to provide coverage where coverage is a challenge. And that's a big part of who we are. And with us having recently rebranded and with us positioning ourselves for the future, we're looking at all kinds of opportunities. One, to get our brand out there, to get our programs out there, but to also educate our producers. So this past month in April, we launched our first ever webinar series, and now we're doing a webinar series the last week of every month, touching on topics related to the verticals that we have, but stepping even beyond that. So like this last one that we did was basically an intro to the brand, right? We just recently became Alchemy Insurance Solutions. We want to tell everybody, this is who Alchemy is, this is what Alchemy does, this is what the culture of the business is, and this is what we're here to help you with. Next month, we're going to switch gears and talk about, placing risks in the cannabis space. So we're going to dig deep into our cannabis program. After that, we're going to switch gears back over to our builder's risk program. And I think that this is really key to touch on, is that a lot of agents do get fascinated by the idea of builder's risk and about the premiums behind it, but they don't know how to build a channel. They don't know how they get those builders in the door. They don't know how to connect with those individuals. So we're going to spend an entire hour in June showing everybody how to reach out, how to build a pipeline for
Oh, that's
builder's
very
risk.
cool. Very,
So
very cool. And
really,
that's
really
very
proud of
much
that.
needed out there. And I think that's something that a lot of agents will gravitate towards because, who doesn't want to be able to build the pipeline and to be able to do some of those things? And that's a very cool, like, value add that you're giving back beyond just, hey, we're going to help you write it. We're actually going to help you prospect it too.
I mean, it's probably the most common question that I get when I'm out there, pounding the pavement, talking to agents, or when I'm at a trade show like ABU and talking to agents. The number one question we get is, I'd really like to sell builder's risk, but I don't know how to build a pipeline. Or I'd really like to sell cannabis insurance, but I don't know how I reach out to that market.
Yeah.
And depending on the municipality, depending on the state and location, it could be fairly simple to set up an actual pipeline, or it could be more complex. Down here in Florida, everybody's information is for sale all the time. So
Yeah.
building a pipeline is pretty easy. You just go to the municipality and say, who's filing permits? I want to reach out to these people. And they basically will give you a printout and you go. But other states are not that easy.
Sure.
I mean, you still got to sell yourself at the end of the day, right? But
Right.
having the access and the phone to be able to pick up and go chase that business. And that's one of the things I will say also, in the years that I've been in insurance, you have to chase builder's risk business. It doesn't come to you. Very rarely does someone knock on the door and say,
Sure.
I'm building this $10 million home I need your help with. You got to seek it out. But once you seek it out and you start to get that pipeline moving, that channel feeds itself.
Sure. And I don't want to wrap up this podcast without getting into, one of the other lines you talked about, because I could sit here and talk to you about builder's risk all day, and there's so many other topics we can get into. We may have to have you a second time to talk more about it, or maybe even co-host a webinar together or something. But I do think, people that shy away from the cannabis insurance, maybe because it's, faux pas, or maybe they just have a hard time wrapping their head around it. I didn't realize until recently, I shouldn't say a couple of years ago, there's a lot of money in the cannabis insurance space. I went to, just by accident, downtown Little Rock. They had a cannabis expo, when they first opened up for medical and whatnot. And I was like, I want to go see what this is about. Let's just walk through it. Like, we were just downtown anyway, and I went through, and the lights alone cost a ton of money. Like the lighting they have. I was like, lighting? What? And then you start thinking about the soil. You talk about this. You talk about there's so much money that goes into that, especially for the medical and for the other stuff. Like, people that are like, oh, I don't want to do, one account could set you up for a long time in the cannabis space.
Without a doubt. And I think, I usually tell people when I'm talking about cannabis and, when they're doubtful about it and they've got reservations, I usually tell them, my dad is a hippie, born in the 50s, raised in the 60s. And, back then they were growing cannabis in the basement. It's not that anymore. It is a real science. It is a real agriculture, and it is a real industry. And it's absolutely amazing to see the development of that industry and the amount of money that gets sunk into, perfecting products and growing things and genomically, adjusting seeds and all of these things that they do. And I was fortunate enough in December, I went over to MJ BizCon to really dig into what the industry does. And it's a massive show in Las Vegas, and everybody is there literally from seed to sale, essentially, in the cannabis industry. So you can learn everything, and you see the cost and the expense of these lights, and you see the cost and the expense of these grow operations. And a lot of the times it's sorely needed, and unfortunately it winds up being a non-admitted item. It winds up being state regulated, so insurance coverage is all basically covered at the state level because it's not a federally legalized item. The dispensaries, especially on their side, don't always have a ton of money to throw around, especially when they're starting out. It's a slow process. It takes a while to get their licensing. They need insurance for their licensing. So that's where like our BOP came into play. The idea that we have a minimum premium of $1,250 and we can get your dispensary basically up and running. We're rating off of gross sales. So if you're a startup, we're able to go ahead and accommodate you pretty much at the lowest of the premiums. But then looking
But
at things as they
but
expand out, they get huge. So we just wrote a cannabis policy. One of our producers wrote a cannabis policy this morning that was several locations in Oklahoma. They look like it looks like a grow operation, and it was $55,000 worth of premium. So it's definitely nothing to scoff at. These are not always tiny premiums, and typically when you get in the door with them, you're keeping all their policies going forward. And as they get bigger, there's more avenues to explore. I
yeah,
know that for
most of
them
them are gonna grow. Uh,
most of them
you
do.
know, exactly. And no pun intended. But yeah, they're going to expand. They're gonna grow, and like even with that $1,200 bot policy, and it's gonna get them where they need to go. But there's so much upsell you could do from that because there's so much that goes into it, or you could add on coverages, or expand on the limits and the whatnot, because there's a lot that that could be not could be missed. I'm not saying it's not a good policy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a lot of things you could add on to that, and there's a lot of bells and whistles that go along with cannabis that I figured out. And it's a real thriving thing in the insurance industry that is it's a good position for you guys to be in, because it's still somewhat not new, because it's been around obviously for a long time, but it's not your to go back to what you said a minute ago, it's not your dad's weed anymore, or this
Yeah.
like there's people like doing different strains of weed, and like I'm not, into it, but like there's people that could tell me, you could walk into a dispensary now and you could say, okay, I want one that doesn't make me paranoid. It doesn't make me this. It doesn't make me that, or it does this. And they could put these strains together and be like, okay, it's like walking into a Walgreens or something. Like you can get different strains, and they can, to your point, it's a science.
Yeah. No, it's a real science, and they're real businesses. And
Yeah.
with that, they need coverage the same as any other real business needs. And in fact, they probably usually wind up needing more coverage than
Yeah.
just your regular business. And we're fortunate enough, like our cannabis program also houses our vape program. Vapes are a hot, item as well. You got tons of folks out there setting up vape shops, whether it's tobacco or it's,
Yeah.
THC stuff.
Yeah.
And we're able to accommodate those individuals. We've got an LRO component, so we're able to, and I love our LRO component, so I will stand on my like soapbox on this one. Our
There you
LRO
go.
component is absolutely fantastic in that anybody who is leasing to any cannabis operation or any tobacco operation qualifies for it, even if you're looking at like 4 store frontage buildings and only one is rented to a cannabis operator. If you're looking at a grow facility that's attached to habitational, these are things that we can do in our program. And they're
That's
things that
cool.
you as the agent, might not think of
Yeah.
as, a way to find a solution for. You may just say, oh, it's got habitational, I don't know what to do with this. Or,
Sure.
it's another one of those nuanced coverages. The more you can learn about it, and that's really where this webinar series comes in, right? The more we can educate you on it, the more comfortable and confident you become selling it. Because we talk to producers all the time who are like, oh, I've never dabbled in it, but it seems interesting, or I don't know enough about it to sell that product. The only way that you get better at selling something that you're unfamiliar with is to learn about it. And the more you learn about that product, the more savvy you are at selling it.
Yeah, agreed. And one of the things that I would even add, to that, just as, some mayoral advice, I think you're okay by letting these people know, hey, I'm new in this niche and I'm growing this niche, and I would love, and it could be a sales pitch. I used to do it all the time of like, I would love for you to help me, to grow this. And again, no pun intended, but to grow my niche in this, because a lot of times they're like, oh, okay, and instead of shying away from it or trying to fake your way out of it or whatever, it's like, oh, I know all about cannabis. It'd be better to go in and say, hey, I'm learning this as we go. I want to learn more. You can ask more questions. You could take more interest, and they see you as a partner long term. Like, oh, he wants to learn the cannabis. He wants to learn the builder's risk space. He wants to learn whatever that niche might be. I think you're okay with that, and I would say my advice would always be to lead with that honesty and lead with that, transparency, instead of going in and saying, oh, I know it all, and then you end up covering them wrong, or you end up screwing up. Then you lose that opportunity forever.
I was gonna say, I just was gonna touch on that because I know you brought up lighting before, and I was like, that's probably one of the bigger things that we see where the producer is not thinking about like what kind of lighting is this operation doing, what is this grow operation using, and they just don't think about it, and they're like, yeah, that's good, but not every carrier is going to have coverage available for a metal halide light because it puts off a ton of heat, it burns a ton of energy, it has a higher fire reactivity. Like, you have to ask that question. You have to know, what kind of lighting are you using? Is it LED? Is it metal halide? Are you using unconventional resources? All of these things play into the insurability and the rate, essentially. So,
Well, and
having that.
that's
Go
where
ahead.
having that consultative approach, that's where having a loss control aspect of it, to be able to say, hey, as I'm growing, again, if you're new at it, as I'm learning this, here's what I've learned, here's what I've researched, here's what my underwriter taught me at Alchemy or whatever it might be, to be able to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you looked into this? And what I've learned is, there's this loss control component of it, or you might think about this because as part of a risk that you don't think of. Like, again, with that high heat and the lighting, there's a lot of claims that could happen there, or when you start talking about different, soil or different this or different that, like there's a lot of different components that could lead to some serious risk and some serious claims.
Within the space, there is a lot of potential for serious risk. You have potential for fire, you have potential for theft, you have vandalism,
Oh
you
yeah.
have all kinds of potential items that could come up. And the stories that we hear within the space are always pretty dramatic. I've heard stories of individuals who, thought that they were covered, that they had a policy for their dispensary, and someone, did a smash and grab,
Yeah.
and they came out, they adjusted the loss, and they realized that they weren't in compliance for their safe room, and they had their claim denied. And now they're
Yeah.
out their stock, they're out their cash, because unfortunately, whether they like it or not, being non-regulated, there are very few banking opportunities for the cannabis space. There's just no place for them to really do that
Sure.
exchange. And
100%.
so they're vulnerable. And I don't think that it's always taken into account until it's too late. And you
Right.
definitely don't want to have your clients underinsured or misinsured, because something as simple as not having, the appropriate lock on a safe room, or having
Yeah.
ventilation that's too big, could mean the difference between coverage and no coverage.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my camera focused again. It went out of focus because my back's killing me. I've been sitting in this chair all day. All right. So anyhow, man, uh, I hate to wrap up. We're gonna have to. I gotta go pick up my kiddos before they're waiting on me and like, Dad, where are you? But man, tell me or tell the audience, tell the audience whatever you want to do about if someone wanted to explore more about Alchemy or get in touch with Matt, or one of your team members, whatever it might be. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you? And maybe take a few minutes if you wanted to. If we missed anything, I know we talked about builder's risk. I know we got into cannabis a little bit. But anything we missed, take the last 2 or 3 minutes just to kind of give your elevator pitch there, how they can contact you. Just put a little bow on this for me.
Sure thing. So to summarize Alchemy, we're an MGU, basically, carrying multiple verticals. We're desiring to grow pretty often. We've got our builder's risk vertical, which I think we covered fairly efficiently in this call. We've got our cannabis, which we've dipped into a little. We've just recently taken over an artisan contractor general liability program that will be working into a contractor liability program. So that's something like a lot to offer in the future for 2025. Again, that ENS builders risk coming out in the next couple weeks, another 2025 offering. We are rapidly looking at growth in the marketplace. We're rapidly looking at, again, solving for that, what I call difficult X, essentially, and being able to provide coverage where other carriers may shy away. And we're actively appointing. I'm actively looking for producers throughout the 50 states of the country, plus DC, plus potentially Puerto Rico. So if you are interested, you want to learn more, again, we have a webinar series. Feel free, go on our website. It's www.alchemyins.com. Go to the contact us. You've got an option to file for an appointment there. you've also got an option to request more information. So you can use either of those forms. They come directly to myself and my team. We'll get back to you in pretty much record time. I mean, that is our goal. Our goal with everything. Our underwriter turnaround is within 72 hours. Our marketing turnaround is within 24. We're trying to make sure that we're reaching out and that we're being the best partner to you that we can, because that's the name of the game, right? It's about providing value on both ends. But definitely come check us out. Sign up for an appointment if you've got the need. If you want to learn more about building a builder's risk pipeline, or you want to learn more about cannabis, sign up for our webinars. We'll put some informational materials on the website also. We actually just started a YouTube channel for the webinar series as well. So again, head to the website, www.alchemyins.com, and you can reach us directly through there. We'll be more than happy to talk to you in great detail about what we do, what we offer, and how we can help you out.
Oh, great job, man. And I can, speak from experience of seeing at the conference I was just at recently, like the line was wrapped around, like sometimes like people wanting to talk to you about it and people wanting to hear more about what you guys are doing, and you and your teammate, y'all did a good job at that. And so I know it's a hot market. I know people are wanting to talk to you guys. So make sure you do that. And then if you ever want to go to a Lightning game, I'm sure Matt's always looking for an excuse to go to another hockey game. So maybe you could hit him up when you're in Tampa.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to show people my talent. So
there you go. Or if you're out there listening and you've got a game used jersey and you want to hook my boy up, I'm sure he would love that. And maybe I could exchange an appointment for that. I'm just kidding. But yeah. So Matt, dude, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here today.
Heath, likewise, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. I love this opportunity, and I love just getting to know more about you and everything that you offer in the podcast. And it's great connecting with you at ABU as well. So thank you.
Dude, I really appreciate it. Thank you.